millage will be levied 50% in summer and 50% in winter, as we've traditionally done. And right now, that current authorized millage is 18.5004 mils. It's capped at 18 mils, and there's a heavily rollback on that. So I believe the original millage that was approved was 19 mils. That's coming up for renewal in just a few years. And the current millage reduction fraction is 0.9977 mils. December 31st, 2024. And this is the portion of state aid that's local. So the $8,700 per pupil that we receive from the state, the 18 mils times the taxable values is the local portion, and the state makes up the difference. So as property values change locally, the state will make up the difference. And as we get into the budget, you'll see that property values decreased locally from where they were anticipated, and the state made up that portion. And just as a reminder for state aid, the funding for the school year, the payments don't start until October. So they go from October. There's no payment in September, so October through August.
And Matt, the 18 mils, the state expects every school district to collect that, correct? And
That's
if you
correct.
don't collect it, or if that's not passed, we're out that 18 mils of funding, correct?
Correct. The state makes the assumption that you're taxing 18 mils, and if you do not, they will not make up the difference. So then if we look at the extra voted millage, this is debt service, that $185 million bond that was issued in 2 series, as well as the sinking fund that the community approved in November of 2019. So this millage will also be levied 50% in summer and 50% in winter. 1.159 mils for Series 1 of the bond, and 0.6010 mils for Series 2. The sinking fund was originally approved at 1.5 mils. Due to that heavily rollback, currently we're going to levy 1.4630 mils. And that sinking fund expires in December of 2029. So then moving on, you can see the history of what the extra voted millage was by year. You'll see in really the first half of this chart that the extra voted millage was around 6 mils on average, starting at 6.7 and then reducing till about 2018, where it hit 6.01 and then drops from 5.3 to 4.9674 to now 3.1132, and a slight increase for this year, 3.223 altogether. That was because of the retirement of some debt obligations, and we were carrying a fund balance that was proportional to the amount of debt and principal payments that we made. Because we no longer have those debt obligations, we were able to utilize fund balance and reduce the taxes for a year to service the debt, and now we need to increase those rates slightly to accommodate for that use of fund balance. So overall, what does this do for revenue? You'll see that in comparison to 2021-22, 38.5 million in 22-23, just over 41 million is expected. General operations, that's the 18 mils, it's 21.6 million. Debt retirement is 10.6. Sinking fund is 8.8. So you see some increases there overall due to the tax rate to some degree, but as well as property tax increases overall, about almost 700,000 in general operations. Debt retirement increased 1.6 because we utilized fund balance in the current year to offset some of those property tax revenues that we needed. And that concludes the Truth in Taxation hearing portion. President Beers, I'll turn it over to you for questions from the board or from the public.
Anything from the board? Okay, seeing none. From the public, comments on this? Seeing none, I think that's closed. Matt, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So now we will move into the next session of the hearing, which is on the 22-23 budgets. So this is likely a familiar slide, to our board. Historically, since I've been here, we've always included the budget recommendations, right? It's a balanced and equitable spending plan, minimizes any impact on student programs, uses a team-based approach, and provides ongoing communication to promote transparency and openness. We amend the budget 3 times, typically in November, one during the winter, February, March, and then at the end of the school year. Since COVID-19, the pandemic started, there's an increased emphasis on availability of resources, maximizing any operational efficiencies, prioritizing our highly effective programs and services, and using fund balance responsibly. So while we've been able to stay in school all year long, we're still feeling different aspects of the pandemic, whether that's from staffing shortages, supply chain issues, inflation. There's a number of impacts that we are concerned about, and we'll work to adjust the budget moving forward, but this is our best guess for the start of the 22-23 school year. So why are we doing this? We're doing this because it's required by law that we have to adopt a budget but by July 1st. So the state legislature made a commitment to try to approve the school aid fund budget by June 30. They, during the pandemic, did not meet that requirement. And I think they might have actually given themselves some grace and removed that from law for a year or permanently, I can't remember which. So, we have to make some assumptions with this budget. We don't have a school aid fund budget yet from the state, though last update that I received was that they're making some progress, and it was expected that maybe even this week that we'd have a school aid fund budget. So if so, then they would meet their deadline of June 30. So we'll see what that actually comes out to be. If we move to the next slide, you'll see what our assumptions are. We expect to maintain current enrollment levels, which is about 14,600 general ed FTE. We're being conservative with a per pupil funding increase of only $250 per student. We saw larger increases from the governor, the Senate, and the House proposals. They ranged anywhere from $300 per student to $450, though they're very different in how they fund categoricals. So the governor's proposal also provides large increases in special education funding, as well as 31A at-risk funding. I forget if it was the House or the Senate, but one other proposal is mostly all in that per pupil foundation increase. And then the other proposal is a split between the per pupil increase as well as a large special education increase. So it'll be interesting to see what comes to fruition and what's actually passed and what the governor signs into law. History has shown us that typically the governor likes to line item veto certain aspects of the school aid fund budget. So the budget as passed by the House and the Senate usually isn't the finalized version. She'll take her red pen out and make some small adjustments to things. Some other assumptions that we made is that there's no additional one-time COVID-19 funding coming. You'll see as we look at the 22-23 budget that there's some large reductions in revenue as well as expenditures. That's because we do not expect that COVID-19 funding to return.
Is there any chance of it, or you think probably just likely not?
I would be surprised, but I mean, it's possible. So, one of the things that we'll talk a little bit about later on in the budget is the food service fund, right? Free meals for all students this year that was supposed to end. Now that was extended through the summer, and I know that there's a push to continue that into next school year. I don't know if that'll come to fruition or not, but it is an election year. School funding is important. Security funding is another piece. Social emotional wellness, I think our legislature is well aware of the needs of school districts and trying to see how they can creatively get us some money. So we're all waiting to see what happens and what's approved and what we'll be looking for next year, and we'll we'll complete an amendment in our November, December timeframe, once that budget's approved, and then we'll have an idea of what our staffing model is, which is always based on the number of students in the district.
Thanks.
Matt, while we're on that section,
Sure.
so you don't expect any of the ESSER, was it 3 funding that we still thought we had money out there? None of that will come through?
So with the grants, what we try to do is we don't try to add any grants that aren't approved by the state.
Okay,
So that's one thing that was approved late in the budget process. It was approved last week. So we will see some increases in the budget in November based on the allocation and the actual budget, grant budget being approved by the state.
okay, and then could you also explain why we don't include special ed students in our account for per pupil funding?
Yeah. So we get a special education reimbursement. So typically for us, our reimbursement is always higher than the actual per pupil funding amount that you get per student. So the number is included in the budget, but it's included at that reimbursement rate that we received this year, rather than trying to say 400 students times the foundational amounts. Child care stabilization grant, we expected to continue. We applied for the second round. We were approved for that last week as well. And then, we do expect to return to closer to normal operations. Maybe there's some argument that this year was a normal year. We have saw, as we get into some of the other budgets, some large increases in student school activity fund budget. We've saw some increases in food service, in bookstore, and some of those funds as well. So the goal for our budget is always to align general fund expenditures, the ones that were material and that we're aware of. So we've added in the contractual increases for Durham School Services, our transportation provider, our custodial contracts, our grounds contracts, any contractual increases based on employment contracts, and also an estimate for healthcare. So that takes us to the actual budget, and the board all saw this across 3 days last week. So the numbers are a little bit small there, but to get to the 22-23 budget, it's actually a reduction in revenue, though to Michelle's point, that'll go up once we amend the budget to include those newly approved items from the state. A reduction of about $2.5 million in revenue. And that's that one-time COVID funding leaving. And there's also some reductions in costs because of that one-time COVID fund also leaving. One change that's in the 22-23 budget is the purchase of 25 school buses. It's about $2.5 million. We placed an order for those buses. The board approved that last July. We had expected, or were told at the time, that to expect the school buses sometime during the winter. We are now hearing that production is scheduled to begin in August. So we're hopeful that those buses will be received in the 22-23 school year, but with some of the supply chain issues, it's possible that that continues to get delayed, but we're hopeful that in a whole nother year we'll have those buses. There's some great things about those buses, some new security, or new safety, features that we wanted to see if it would be a more efficient or more useful, more safe bus, as well as replacing buses that are aging out of the fleet. So I remember during COVID, we had some school buses that didn't have a PA system on it. So one of the calls that we got from a parent was, the bus driver never tells the kids to put a mask on when that was required. Well, it's not that they aren't, it's that when you're way in the back of the bus and there's no PA system, you can yell as much as you can, but it may not reach there. So all the new buses will have those PA systems. That's a much needed safety feature that will be great to add. So as we look at these two budgets, it's a use of fund balance in the 21-22 final amendment of about $800,000, and then next year about a use of $1.1 million of fund balance. And as we mentioned earlier, in the presentation, we wanted to use fund balance responsibly and utilize COVID funding for as long as we could to help sustain the operations of the organization. So if we move to the next slide, that'll give you a little bit clearer, it's a little bit bigger, where you can see those numbers that I just shared about an $800,000 use of fund balance and a $1.1 million use of fund balance next year. Again, keep in mind that next year's budget is based on a $250 per pupil increase without ESSER III equalization and some of these grants that we were just approved for. So overall, what does that do to our general fund? You can see in 2013, expenditures exceeded revenue. That was true again in 2014, but much closer. And then beginning in 2015 and 16, revenue exceeded expenditures. Now, since the pandemic began, those two lines are getting much closer, and we're looking at break-even budgets or small gains to fund balance or uses of fund balance. This is the percentage of fund balance, which reflects the information from the previous chart. You'll see that we used fund balance in 13 and 14. 15, it began to stabilize and then increased in the following years, and now it's being reduced. And part of that reduction is because of the one-time COVID funding. So our expenditures have grown. If you look at 2021 final actual, we had about $184 million in expenditures. The 21-22 final budget that we're proposing has almost $200 million of expenditures. All right, so then we have all of our other funds. So we have 7 other funds that we're presenting a budget for: the debt service fund, the capital projects bond fund, and the sinking fund. The debt service fund, we are using a small amount of fund balance, but trying to get that overall fund balance down to a range that between 10 and 15% ideally. Capital projects fund, this is the bond fund. We're coming to the end of the bond. Estimating right now an ending fund balance of about $126,000, though it's likely that we'll spend all that bond money, though that also depends upon supply chain issues. A lot of this is technology. Sinking fund budget, that's about an $8.8 million budget with revenue and expenditures basically offsetting a small $4,000 increase right now to the fund balance of the sinking fund. And then we look at the special revenue funds. One is the Caring Steps Fund, about $1.1 million in revenue offset by $1.1 million in expenditures. There is a budgeted transfer of $116,000 from general fund to the Caring Steps Fund to support those operations. That is the same amount that we presented in the initial budget 12 months ago. Bookstore Fund, $202,000. There was an increase there. Some of that was related to food service and the sale of a la carte items at much lower levels from our food service teams than prior. So the bookstores were able to sell some of those items and saw a large increase in revenues. Pretty large increase to fund balance for them, about $55,000 is projected. Food service fund, this is another area where revenues are up due to the pandemic. The free meals and the participation, almost $5 million in revenue, with the bulk of that being federal revenue. So those a la carte sales that came from our students, maybe $100,000 in total revenue. 4.8, I believe, was federal revenue, so reimbursements for meals. So our students loved that. The participation levels were high. They were so high that we didn't think they were real. When the first time we saw them, 99% of our kids are eating in some of our buildings. That was great. Student School Activity Fund, $3 million, an increase there as well as we return to normal activities. And this fund is our athletic teams. It is student council, NHS, some of those programs. So an increase in revenues there, as well as an increase in expenditures. That fund really isn't designed to make money, right? Parents and students pay into that fund, and that money goes out to support those programs. So that takes me to the end of our budget hearing presentation. Mr. President, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Anything from the board?
Matt, I know this, these are big buckets of money, right? There's not a lot of detail in it. Are there any new programs or programs that we had that we're no longer continuing that would be reflected in this budget?
None that I can think of right now. I mean, I think the big question for all of us is that we know that there's a number of needs out there, and depending on what resources are provided to us, that'll help us to make maybe different decisions than we would. For example, the school security grant. There was a small bill passed that funds school safety reviews and to pay for consultants to come out and look at security procedures. So that's something that we're going to do and apply for. And if there's additional funding out there, then we make some larger scale changes to our safety maybe designs of our building, whether that's technology or additional staffing. It all depends on what funding is available and if it's sustainable, right? We want to do this in a sustainable way. It's great to increase safety and security, but it's only going to be here for a year and then we can't fund it next year, then we probably should make some different decisions with the future in mind.
Just a loaded general question, wow, for you, Matt. You know, I mean, I know it's like to go through this stuff, and you guys work pretty hard to make something complex look simple. But in doing the work on this, just wondering like what occurred to you, and you as your team was doing the work on this, one thing that maybe stuck out more than most that made you feel most optimistic about how things are progressing and where they're going, and what's one thing that maybe raises your eyebrow for maybe the potential biggest area of opportunity or maybe even concern, if that's the right word?
Yeah, so I mean, we have always a concern about funding, right? So this year funding seems to be more positive than maybe it's ever been in my 10 years in school finance. I don't know that I've ever saw a $450 per pupil increase. I think it's gone the other way, maybe 10, 11 years ago where we lost 430, I think it was. So, you know, the funding is great. The focus is on doing it in a sustainable way in case there is a cliff that comes, whether that's 22-23 or 23-24 or beyond, because we know that, you know, inflation is at 8% right now, and we know that gas prices are high. You know, I was just talking to Lori Grind the other day. During the 2021 school year, which included some remote periods, we used about 120,000 gallons of fuel. And that was at about $2.11 per gallon. So gas prices, and we get some breaks because we're a local government and school district, but that's going to eat up a large chunk of the budget next year if fuel prices stay at over $5 a gallon. You know, we think about our buildings and getting materials and supplies. We think about our technology teams getting Chromebooks on time. I know that Cindy has a large device refresh plan for that bond money. That's one of the reasons she's been holding it. So meeting the timelines for that. And, you know, there's certain times where it's best to do things for a school district, usually over the summer, whether that's a device refresh or construction. So we may have to make the best of the situation and do some things during the school year that we'd ideally like not to. But, you know, right now it seems positive. It's just figuring out the best way to do this sustainably and get the most bang for our buck.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Anything else from the board? Public comment on this budget portion? Seeing none, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, and Mr. President, if we could recognize Christy Beakey, our Director of Financial Services. She's the one that spent hours and hours and hours with this budget, so thank you, Christy.
Thank you very much, Christy. Thank you. And to the whole team, Matt, please pass along. Okay, so I think that'll wrap up this first meeting here. We need a motion to adjourn the meeting at 6:59. That's Kristen, and support from Michelle. And still 6:59, and we will adjourn and be back maybe 5. All right, thank you. Adjourned. Okay. It's 7:07, and we'll call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, roll call, all board members are present with the exception of Jessica Gupta, who is absent with notice, and at this time, Joe Patel is running late and expected to be here. Next on the agenda is communications, and usually that is the Secretary of the Board of Education. In his place is Vice President Kristen Bull.
Thank you, Kevin. The Board of Education received 6 email communications since the previous meeting. Community member Cheryl Heininger contacted the board to share the complete statement she made during the June 6th meeting, which supports student voice. I don't know why I volunteered to read this because I did just tell my colleagues that I forgot my glasses, so apologies. District parent Roxanne Rapanen contacted the board 2 times regarding school-age care. District parent Rukia Kupakanoga contacted the board regarding backpacks in school. District parent Stephanie Van Dale contacted the board regarding reputation and trust. And district parent Eric Rulau contacted the board regarding lack of email response, staff support, and leadership. And that's the end of the report.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Others from the board? Nothing? Okay. Before we move on, I do want to remind that this is a public business meeting of the board. However, we welcome public comment at various points on our agenda. If you wish to speak tonight and have not already filled out a form online, please fill out a yellow card located on the table near the entrance and hand it to Lori Grine, who is seated right there. Lori, if you could wave to the crowd. There we go. That safe ed person right there. Thank you. When it's time for public comment, we'll direct you to the microphone located right by that safe ed representative right there. When addressing the board, you will have 3 minutes to speak. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. Please be mindful of this time limit out of respect for all members of the public who wish to address the board. When addressing the board, please state your name and your relationship to the district. Please address your comments to the entire board and not to individual board members, the superintendent, or other school district employees, or to members of the audience. We reserve the right to exclude from our meeting an individual who engages in conduct that constitutes a breach of the peace. This includes intemperate behavior. On behalf of my colleagues on the board, we are grateful to serve this community and appreciate your support. And next on the agenda is consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If any member of the board or any citizen requests discussion of an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will become the first item of business under the new business portion of the agenda. Board of Education meeting schedule for 2022 and 2023. 4.2 is Board of Education closed meeting minutes, June 3rd, 2022. 4.3 is Board of Education regular meeting minutes, June 6th, 2022. 4.4 is approval for Jessica Gupta to register for Michigan Association of School Board trainings, including CBA 101, Fundamentals of School Board Service, and CBA 102, Governing Through Policy. Would any board members like to remove an item for discussion? Okay. Would anyone from the public like to remove any of these items for discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. That's by Scott with support from Barb. All right, thank you. We'll take a vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, and that for now is a 5-0 vote. All right, and on to new business. This is the update to the board handbook. This is an action item, and we have a special guest with us from Collins and Blaha, and that is Jeremy Chisholm. Thank you for being here this evening, Jeremy. Good. I think there's a button. There we go. All right.
Is that better?
That's better. Yeah. Thank you. If you could begin, we'd much appreciate it.
I'd be happy to, and thank you for having me. I'll note that I'm always happy to be here, and it's especially good to be back face to face. It's nice to see everybody. The topic that I would like to present for you, President Beers, is a refresh of your school board handbook. And to do that, I'd like to place it in context briefly. Scott can get the hook. You know, when you give the lawyer the microphone, it could go for a while. But I'll try to be concise. But I would like to place it in context. You have a series of policies that are specifically devoted to the operations of the board, and the board calls those bylaws. They're part of your general policy package, but we refer to those as the bylaws. It's my understanding that your policies, including your bylaws, are currently going to be undergoing a series of reviews so that they can be brought up to date in a broad spectrum picture. Part of that review is reviewing the conduct of meetings bylaws, and do they need any refreshing, and do they need to be brought in alignment with any sort of recognized industry best practices. One thing I will note before getting into the specifics of the proposal that's been placed before you tonight is that your bylaws do not need to be modified. The bylaw that you have on the operation of meetings, which covers, among other things, hearing members of the public, is broad, it's general, and it is in alignment with the Open Meetings Act as it stands. And so I am not recommending, and I'm not aware of anybody else recommending, a change to your actual bylaws. The bylaws as they are structured currently indicate that the board will publish a handbook, which you do, and that the handbook will contain information to make it easier for the public to navigate what to expect if they come to a board meeting, essentially. I paraphrase, but that's the essence of the handbook section on the conduct of meetings. And when we compared your current practice for conduct of meetings to the norms of the industry standard practice, noticed a couple of things that could perhaps be brought into alignment if the board chooses to do so. One of those is that your agenda currently devotes more time to public commentary rather than board business than the average school board agenda. Most school board agendas will contain the statutorily required one section of public comment. It's got to be at least an hour long. People will need to be allowed to speak for at least 3 minutes apiece. And that's pretty standard, that most people align their own practices, their own handbooks, for lack of a better term, with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Rochester currently has additional places that displace board business in favor of additional commentary from members of the public. So one thing that could be aligned with industry practice is aligning with the Open Meeting Act requirement of having at least 1 hour section of public comment rather than multiple times throughout the course of your meeting. That's the chief refresh that you could do to your handbook. The other would be to bring in line with, again, industry standard practice, the prefatory statements and the standards that we hold for how a meeting is conducted. And what I mean by that is that the law allows, the Open Meeting Act allows, and most school districts follow a policy of trying to make sure that board business is placed first and receives the focus of the meeting, and that the meeting doesn't become overtaken by events and turn to other purposes, that this is really a board business meeting and should be treated as such. And so you can realign some of the language in your handbook to acknowledge that we're not going to have disruptive practices being tolerated during the course of a board meeting. The third point that would be included within this refresh or this realignment of your handbook would be updating your website in specific ways that have been detailed for you as well, so that your website will be completely in alignment with the updated handbook and will hopefully make it much easier for the public to know what to expect and to understand what the standards are when they come to a board meeting. So that's the basics of what's being proposed to you. I'd be happy to try to answer questions if I can. I will note simply that if you ask me for my opinion, I'll probably demur because we're in public and I offer opinions under attorney-client privilege.
Thank you. Okay. Barbara, looks like you have something.
Thank you, Jeremy. I did have one question.
Yes.
You did mention that what you're proposing aligns with best practices of other districts. In Oakland County, I believe there's approximately 28 districts. Out of those districts, does your firm represent them, and have you offered counsel to them regarding changes to their meeting procedures similar to what you're recommending here? And if so, what school districts are those, if you can name them?
I will actually prefer to be discreet about the names of school districts just out of respect for clients, and I would offer the same if anybody asked about Rochester as well. The fact of representation is disclosed by the board by inviting me, but it's not something that I disclose on behalf of clients without them asking me to do. I will note we do represent a couple of school districts other than Rochester in Oakland County, and we also represent a number of school districts in Macomb County and Genesee County, Wayne County, and Monroe County throughout the Tri-County region here. We have offered similar advice to a couple of clients that needed updates to their conduct of meetings practices. I will say that to my knowledge, of the 40-some school districts in Southeast Michigan that we regularly work with, I'm not aware of another school district that has the current practice that Rochester does of having 3 separate places on the agenda for public comment.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you, Jeremy. I know that we have one of the most accommodating policies when it comes to hearing comments from the public, and this has made our meetings at times maybe less efficient and effective than they could be. But I'm concerned by the proposed changes to our handbook that could move us to being one of the most restrictive, at least from my review of agendas of local school boards. Many nearby districts offer at least 2 periods for comment. Sometimes that's one opportunity at the beginning of a meeting for comments that pertain to an agenda item, and one at the end to cover all other comments. Some have the ability for those who request to be on the agenda to speak at the beginning of the meeting, with everyone else speaking at the end. There are also some who only designate one time for public comment, but have found that all of those that I've seen have public comment at the beginning of the meeting, or at least prior to any action items. I personally would prefer that the proposed handbook changes stipulated where the public comment would be during our meeting. Also, if we had a topic where we thought the public might have input on and we added a section, I'd like the public to be able to speak to that topic as well as any other item they might want to speak to on the general public comment section, which means that under D, no participant may speak more than once, I would want to add during each public participation agenda item, or maybe no participant may speak more than once on the same subject. I regularly attended board meetings for 10+ years before I ran for the school board, so I may have a different view from some who sit at the board table. I appreciated the ability to make a comment about an item presented, and while I understand that we may need to make some changes so that our meetings are more efficient and effective, I also want the public to be able to comment if they feel they have something to offer that we might not have considered. If we do approve changes tonight or in the future, I hope that we ensure that all relevant information pertaining specifically to action items is available online in a timely manner. I'd like my board colleagues to consider adding specifics around where public comment would be included on the agenda, and adding that someone could speak more than once if it is on 2 different subjects. And Jeremy, I have 2 follow-up questions for you. One, I'm curious, in the first paragraph, the last sentence, what type of additional guidelines could go into effect immediately that were not part of the board guidelines? Could you give me an example of what that means?
When you say an example of guidelines that are not included currently, that could cover any number of topics that the board would wish to include.
So it would have to be approved by the board then, within those 24 hours beforehand, and that would not need to be at a public meeting?
Perhaps I'm misunderstanding your question. Your policy 0153 outlines the process for updating the handbook with guidance that might be needed. And per that and policy 0122, the process for modifying your handbook is a simple vote per Robert's rules. It doesn't require additional work.
So where it says additional guidelines may go into effect immediately, provided they are posted to the Rochester Community Schools Board of Education website 1 day prior to a board meeting. Is that from a policy? Is that an addition to something? Where does that stem from?
So if the board were to adopt that language as it's presented, that means the board, if it felt necessary, could post a day in advance of a meeting that there would be additional guidelines for how comments would be made at the meeting.
Or anything related to a meeting.
Or
So that could
conduct
be
of-
like, for
conduct of
example,
meetings, yeah.
directional, because we've had to do that in
Yes.
the past, or like if a meeting is not being recorded because of some reason, or if it's changed location, right?
Well, this is specifically on hearing of the public.
So, if I may, legally, the board has the authority to post changes when it needs to, and with the spirit of the law being trying to give the public notice. For example, the one that Kristen just mentioned, if the camera facilities are not recording properly, if we're having a malfunction with technology, we might move to a facility where it is functioning, or we might inform the public, I'm sorry, the cameras aren't functioning tonight, because you're not required to broadcast a meeting. It's something that we choose to do. And so having that level of flexibility to respond to things is something you already have the authority to do. It's not currently noted in your handbook, so we thought it was worth mentioning. Now the public knows in the handbook you do have the authority to do that.
And is that does the board vote on that, or is that just the board president making a change?
So the board only needs to vote to modify its policies in accord with the bylaw that governs that, and vote for a change in the handbook, which is provided for in policies 0153 and 0122. So you would not need necessarily to vote on what we're envisioning is a technical conduct of meeting sort of thing, like the cameras aren't working, please go here instead.
Okay, so this is specifically technical.
This wouldn't be able to
this would be-
supersede anything that's already embodied in your policy somewhere else, for example.
And then my second question is, in the resolution, it talks about best practices. And so could you explain who created the list of best practices and where that can be found?
So I have provided to our firm, not only my own work, has provided to the board under attorney-client privilege a letter outlining the results of our survey of districts in the area and what we've referred to as industry standard practices. Best practices, I think, is a perfectly fair term, and I think it's a very common term. If there's any weight put on that, I could understand and say, well, we won't use the term best then, because best is a matter of perspective, I suppose. But industry standard practices seem to be, as you indicated earlier, commonly that most districts and other public bodies, because the Open Meetings Act applies to other public bodies as well, but most school districts in the area align their practice with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Some go a little bit further in the ways that were noted. The most common feature that's a derivative from the Open Meetings Act is having two comment periods rather than the required one. We do see that in several places.
Thank you.
More from the board.
So I think that letter A, public participation shall only be permitted as indicated on the order of business, gives us flexibility as a board to accommodate, correct me if I'm wrong, additional periods for public comment. That's how I read this.
Yes, so, and again, I don't mean to speak too far off course or for too long, but a little bit of context. The handbook I view as an important transparency tool that's not required. You're not required by law to publish a handbook that has this level of detail. All you're required to publish are your bylaws. So policy 153 is the one that says we will create a time period in which people can come and speak to the board in alignment with the Open Meetings Act. I paraphrase, but that's essentially what it says. You're not required to go further. So anything further that you publish is really an accountability limitation for the board, because you have the authority under the Open Meetings Act to do what you need to do within the parameters of the Open Meetings Act. Anything more specifically published is really for the benefit of the public, so that the public understands when they come in what's the conduct of the meeting going to be. So in terms of A, on the proposed handbook, public participation shall be permitted as indicated on the order of business. That means as long as you are publishing your order of business, your agenda, in alignment with your other existing bylaws and policies in the Open Meetings Act, that you could add a section if you felt like you needed to add a section of public comment at a particular meeting. That would be permissible under this. You wouldn't be limiting yourself by that.
And that's at the discretion of the chair, basically, the president.
Yes, all procedural aspects of running the meeting are currently delegated to the chair. The board has adopted, and you'll forgive me, I don't remember which number of the bylaws it is. I believe it's 43, but don't hold me to that. Robert's Rules as your governing instrument for how you run a meeting. Right. And in the absence of it being a piece of authority being given to a specific other person for making these decisions about a meeting, it devolves on the chair.
Yeah. So to your point, Michelle, I think that would allow the flexibility needed in an agenda if specifically there was an action item that we would be voting on that required public comment, then we could modify the agenda to include or shift that area of public comment to that particular section if we felt it was appropriate.
I guess I would just argue that I would like to have it listed where public comment is going to be, with a notation then that it could be changed if desired by the full board, rather than having to add things at every meeting potentially if it's not there.
Thank you.
So when we say public participation shall only be permitted as indicated on the order of business, so your thought is that that's not clear?
It's not clear. Is that one time? Is that 2 times for speaking? What is that? Is that going to be public comment at the end? So if there's an action item, someone can't make a comment beforehand. That's the piece that I'm looking for clarification on.
Well, D, if you look down at D, no participant may speak more than once. There's your clarification.
Which I also had asked to be changed.
Oh, okay. Well, that's redundant. I mean, that answered your question.
So I think what you're getting at, so there's 2 different points, but I think the one is maybe there's just another word that can be added to A, or a phrase that it makes it clear that every agenda is different, or every agenda could be different.
I guess I'm specifically looking that it would say public participation would be twice. The first time would be for any action item or business be listed on that agenda, and all others would be at the end of the meeting or wherever we put it.
Thank you. More from the board.
I'll just say that I support this as is currently.
Okay. All right, so in its current state, this is the resolution to align with best practices. A regular meeting of the Rochester Community Schools Board of Education held on June 27th, 2022 at 7 p.m. The meeting was called to order by myself, Kevin Beers. Present were the 5 of us on the stage. Jessica Gupta and Joe Patel absent. The following preamble and resolution will be offered. We need first a motion, I believe, to offer this, and then a second. Okay, you want to, okay, let's do this. Let's do this first. Whereas the board currently maintains policies and a handbook regulating the conduct of public meetings, and whereas the board desires to better align its policies and handbook with standard best practices in public education in accord with the Open Meetings Act, and whereas the board has determined in consultation with the advice of counsel that adopting the attached amendments to its handbook would achieve its goal of alignment with best practices in accord with the Open Meetings Act. Therefore, be it resolved that 1, the board hereby adopts that attached amendments to its handbook, and 2, all other resolutions and parts of resolutions insofar as they conflict with the provisions of this resolution are hereby rescinded. And now we need a motion for this. Okay, Barb motions, we need support,
Support.
and that's Kristen. Okay, so putting it to a vote. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Public comment on this.
I am Joshua Raymond, a parent in the district. I've always thought that the multiple opportunities for comment were one of the best things RCS has done at board meetings compared to other districts. I would be sad to see this excellent practice removed. Thank you for Trustee Butel for expressing views representing at least this citizen. I was deeply concerned with the legality of several proposed sections. This is not in regards as to whether these are beneficial or not. Section F, direct his/her remarks to the board and or presiding officer of the board, not to individual board members, the superintendent, or other district employees or members of the audience. This must be enforced in a content-neutral manner. It cannot be cited only when a member of the audience disparages or offends one of these individuals, but also when a member of the audience praises or thanks an individual. After this rule was cited at a previous meeting, I spoke and thanked an administrator, but was not warned by the BOE president. Section H, behavior that is intemperate, abusive, defamatory, or discourteous, or that otherwise interferes with the orderly conduct and timely completion of the board meeting is prohibited. This is not content neutral and is thus a violation of the First Amendment as ruled in Eisen et al. Versus Madison Local School District Board of Education. Section 2, interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Again, Eisen versus Madison ruled personally directed and abusive restrictions prohibit speech because it opposes or offends the board or members of the public is in violation of the First Amendment. Sections 3 and 4 request any individual to leave the meeting when the person behaves in a manner that is disruptive with the orderly conduct of the meeting, or request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly process of the meeting. Section 3.6 of the Open Meetings Act, a person must not be excluded from a meeting otherwise open to the public except for a breach of the peace actually committed at the meeting. The Michigan Penal Code. The Michigan Penal Code provides a thorough definition of where a breach of peace can occur. However, it says very little about exactly what a disturbance of a lawful meeting is. However, in Cusimano versus Dunn, a breach of the peace constitutes seriously disruptive behavior involving abusive, disorderly, dangerous, aggressive, or provocative speech and behaviors tending to threaten or incite violence. This would not qualify under your rules. I request that the illegal parts be removed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Deanna Harless, and I'm a resident of Rochester Hills, and I wanted to say I do support what Trustee Butel was saying. I think those would be good changes to make to this resolution. I worry with a district that's facing such massive transparency problems that are in the news almost every week, it seems like lately, silencing the community or even the appearance of silencing the community is not going to help with the community relations at all. Also, when we get the agendas out on Friday, when there's big changes like this, just a suggestion going forward, I think it'd be great if there was a red line version. I was able to find the old handbook to compare, but it would be really good for the sake of transparency to be able to say, okay, this was the old, this is the new, like a red line version. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the comments from the public. I didn't have to fill out a yellow sheet yet, and I'm already on
Yes,
the
yep.
friggin' agenda.
Yeah, go ahead.
All of you are disgraceful for doing this. Anybody up there agreeing to this, which I know that you're, sitting there in your, high elitist attitude that you're going to silence us all because it's an election year and, do whatever. Go ahead and try because we'll get your asses off. So you don't get a choice in how we present ourselves up here at the podium, and I refuse to cater to your precious and bruised sensitivities.
Thank you. And next.
I'm Carol Beth Cooey. I have 2 kids in the district. So I'm concerned about this board handbook, about the ways in which you're trying to restrict public comment. I shared the concerns of Trustee Butel about no participant may speak more than once. Because I was wondering, does that mean if a parent requests to be on the agenda to speak, but later hears something during the meeting, they won't be allowed to comment anymore, to question it? So I really appreciate that she brought that up and that you did engage in some sort of discussion, because this was the first time I've seen something like that, and it was refreshing, to say the least. I'm also concerned about some of the language that was used in these rules. You talk about prohibiting behavior that's abusive or harassing. I think that's something we already kind of have going on, but you also prohibit behavior that's intemperate, discourteous, frivolous, repetitive, irrelevant. Does repetitive mean you're not allowed to speak about things from one meeting to the next, or does it mean within the same meeting you're not allowed to speak about the same sort of thing? All of these things, I just wonder, who are you to judge about words like that? I mean, given that you've ignored so many parent concerns from the past couple years, a lot of us have been led to believe that you think most parents speaking to you are frivolous and irrelevant. And I'm afraid these rules will be applied in a way that, once again, discriminates against people whose viewpoints you don't like. And there have been some Supreme Court cases about this very thing. We need to improve relations with parents and citizens in our community, and I'm afraid that these speech restrictions will do the opposite.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm just waiting for the clock to restart. Good evening, Board of Education. My name is John Marco. I'm a resident and a taxpayer. All political power is inherent of the people, Section 1. Nor shall any person be denied in the enjoyment of his civil or political rights, Section 2. The people have the right to peaceably assemble, consult for the common good, and instruct their representatives, that would be you, and to petition the government for the redress of their grievances. Each of you swore an oath to this, that you would defend those rights to the best of your ability, which makes me question how you can even consider what you have presented before you this evening. Section E, individuals wishing to speak on an agenda item are required to complete a hearing for the public comment card. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean if I see an agenda item, I have to fill out a card ahead of time before I ever hear you speak, or the item's even presented, or I hear you speak about it? So the 19 items you have on here tonight, I'm going to have to sit there and fill that card out for those 19 items because I may want to speak on it, because that's what that says. The presiding officer may prohibit public comments which are frivolous, repetitive, or harassing. Terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, offensive, or irrelevant. Request that an individual leave the meeting for being disruptive. Call for recess or adjournment for public decorum. Since this draft has no definitions, meaning frivolous, repetitive, harassing, personally directed, abusive, offensive, irrelevant, disruptive, etc., 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 one can only assume that the chair will now be king of these meetings. Since this draft is heavy on viewpoint discrimination, members of the board, I will remind every one of you that a week from today, we celebrate getting rid of a king. We tossed him for a reason, and we put you in charge, a representative republic. That's the point here. The people have a right to speak, and your gobbledygook, and no offense to your lawyer, I know he's doing his job, but the gobbledygook that you have in front of you right now, you have a lawyer, he can't even explain it to one of your board members. And I'm glad to know that some of you think this is a good thing, but let me be perfectly clear with you. If you silence the people,
30 seconds.
they will be the ones going, I want your address, I want your phone number. I would suggest that you not only consult your attorney for the school board, but you also consult the attorney that sits on your board. Because quite frankly, this
10
is
seconds.
offensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Greenwald. I was surprised to see the recommended changes to the board handbook and website listed on tonight's agenda. The handbook still mentions the dialogue with board members, which is to happen the hour before meetings. When will this be reinstated? I believe many members of our community are looking forward to the return of this opportunity to have an open dialogue with the board. In addition, I was appalled by the censure the board and its council are looking to enforce by allowing no participant may speak more than once. You are simply inviting more lawsuits to a district that you have already severely compromised by infringing on the First Amendment rights of our community members. Please do the right thing and eliminate this item from the draft. What a coincidence that this matter is proposed during the summer when many community members may not be paying close attention. It looks like the board and its council are trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the community. But like I said, it's probably just a coincidence. And finally, being that Collins and Blaha had a hand in preparing the changes to the handbook, their motives for a given text seem questionable at a minimum. They show that they are negligent in their counsel by allowing such text to be put forth. To me, this looks like they are racking up billable hours to a client that blindly follows their lead. Something so obvious to freedom-loving citizens as a First Amendment violation should be quite obvious to lawyers who should be well aware of the rights protected under our Constitution. Does the district utilize any oversight as far as the extent of use and the credibility of the services provided by Collins and Blaha? The exorbitant amount of weight put in counsel's judgment seems quite suspicious. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is going to be a little repetitive, so I won't repeat all of it. But yeah, I was definitely going to come up and bring up the clear issue with Collins and Blaha being the one giving the advice. Our cease and desist letters that go out, the ones that were mentioned in the depositions, the ones that were at the heart of the lawsuit about the First Amendment violation of a parent, has Collins and Blaha's name on it, has Mr. Chisholm's name on it. So I think we should really be questioning, and I've sent this communication directly to the board and to Shaner, that you probably should be questioning the advice you're getting because it does seem to not be legal. When you're threatening citizens with legal actions when there is no teeth behind that, that is very poor legal advice. So Mr. Chisholm has definitely led us down the road. Also during the depositions, one, he got paid to sit in on some of them when he had no vested interest in there. So again, why were we paying him? Two, it was really questioned the part that Shaner testified that he brought him, the Collins and Blaha, to Rochester, that we did not have a relationship with them. So is he really protecting Shaner's interest or the district's interest. These are things that are very transparently seen, that is a huge conflict of interest. And when we're talking about, yes, you're going to say the best practices came from a poll that he did that we're going to protect with client privilege. So just trust us, it's best practice. I think anyone that's turned on the news can see school districts around the country are struggling with more parents that are paying attention because of COVID. I've openly admitted, I did not know who any of you were before 2020. That was my fault. I accept responsibility for that. But now that a lot more of us are paying attention, we're picking up on things. So yes, that's why you're getting more questions. That's why more people are talking. And so to say best practice, no, most districts need to figure this out. And so to go backwards is the wrong thing. And to continue to listen to a lawyer that got you sued once already and has sent out clearly just worthless cease and desist letters, I got 2 of them, worthless, what are we paying them for and why would we continue to pay them?
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John Tenney, husband, parent of 3 kids in the district, patriot, one that loves the Constitution, the Michigan Constitution as well. If I understand right, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that you guys are elected officials. And if being elected officials, that means that you represent and you respond to the people. And if you're trying to eliminate the people from speaking, then how do you know what we desire for our children? That's my question to you guys.
Thank you. Okay, so we've gotten to the time to vote on this resolution to align with best practices.
Mr. President, I wonder if I could have a suspension of the rules and opportunity to speak on this.
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. President, and I'm sorry for being a little tardy to the meeting. I don't have a good excuse. I was golfing. June 27th is kind of a family holiday for us, and I was golfing with my dad, and I didn't want to miss it. But I was glad to come here to make a vote on this measure. I had announced early that I wasn't going to be here, so I'm not terribly surprised that this was brought now when I wasn't planning to be here. In part because for 6 months I've been pushing against this change. I missed the initial discussion, but just so we're clear, I don't believe, Mr. President, that this is based on legal advice. I mean, I know our lawyers have given us this advice. This is a policy choice. And so the question is, why are we making this policy choice now? Now, I think it's fair that this board and this administration has received a lot of criticism, a lot of it, in my estimation, completely unfair, by the way, over these last years. Now, School Board 101 has taught us, I didn't take the class yet, I will ask to take the class soon, but I read the Cliff Notes. School Board 101 says that school boards should not be reactionary. In fact, it was under that theory that, frankly, the anti-retaliation statement was maybe not acted upon because it was viewed as reactionary. But these changes, to me, seem to be the essence of reactionary. Let's take for a moment, by the way, that I agree with Mr. Chisholm in the sense that our board rules are not consistent with those districts around us. That's true. Other districts give far less time, and by the way, I'm covering ground already covered, probably, but other districts give far less time and far fewer opportunities to speak on measures. Part of me, though, is actually proud of that tradition in Rochester. But let's take for a moment that the board rules require a review. I think they do. This is the first measure, this is the first change that we're proposing. 2 weeks ago, I was told that an anti-retaliation policy statement that I proposed was redundant and unnecessary. But now, 2 weeks later, we seem to be moving in an opposite direction. The anti-retaliation statement was meant to give comfort and confidence where maybe some comfort and confidence is lost. I don't see tactically how making this change now at the end of the year will restore confidence and comfort. So my final, and by the way, let me just be very clear. This is important. Almost everything that the people say at that microphone, I disagree with. Almost everything that they say. And let me be even doubly clear. I don't love sitting here and having the same person say the same thing 3 times. And I don't love sitting here for hours and hours and hours and hours. But my personal feelings will not get in the way of what I believe is one of the key duties, which is to ensure that even those loud voices that annoy me and that I don't agree with have a chance, a safe place to offer their opinions and to make complaints. So whether it takes all night, in my view, so be it. I'm going to vote no on this provision. Any changes to the board rules at this time. And Mom, because I know you're watching, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I had a few things to say in response to that. I'm glad that you could make it to this meeting. So I take offense to a suggestion that this was put on this agenda because you weren't going to be here. I think that all of us have had different commitments over the past few months and will continue to in the next couple months. I don't think any of us, our attendance is guaranteed at any of these meetings. So I'm just going to say that right now. If that's believed or not, I wanted to make sure that that was on the record. I respect your opinion. I wanted to talk about key duties. When you mentioned your key duties, I actually look at this from a slightly different perspective. I think one of our key duties is to the kids. I think that's our only key duty, is to the students. So I look at our key duty as keeping, and I agree, if we have to be here all night for board business, I'm willing to be here all night for board business. But when our members of our administration, members of our instructional staff are here past midnight, and then the next morning they're welcoming our kids at 6:45 into the buildings, I think that something needs to be done about that. I will say that I've heard more comments from people in this community about the fact that our meetings are going on too late and people are speaking too many times about the same things than any other issue over the past 2 years.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And
Opposed.
how many is, hang on a sec, how many?
Aye.
There's aye, 3, all right. Okay, so it's 3 ayes, and now nays?
Nay.
No.
Okay, and that's 3, which means it does not go forward at this point. Okay, so next on the agenda under new business is 5.2, and that is Human Resource Report. This is an action item. Dave Murphy.
Good evening, President Beers, members of the community. I'm recommending the following actions for approval this evening. Following REA resignations, Sophia Campbell, social worker, Dr. Schultz, center, submitted her letter of resignation effective the end of this school year. Ms. Campbell's been with the district since November of 2021. Excuse me. Ashley Pells, psychology teacher, Adams High School, submitted her letter of resignation effective at the end of the school year. Ms. Pells has been with the district since September 2009. And Alexandria Shaw, kindergarten teacher, Hampton Elementary, submitted her letter of resignation effective the end of the school year. And Ms. Shaw has been with the district since October 2017. Also like to recommend the following administrator appointments. Assistant Principal, Ruther Middle School. Emily Collier is being recommended to become the Assistant Principal of Ruther Middle School. Ms. Collier has been a teacher with Rochester Community School District for more than 13 years. During that time, she served the students as a K-5 elementary resource room teacher, 5th grade teacher, and as a middle school resource math teacher and co-teacher for Math 6. Last summer, Ms. Collier developed and taught an online math camp for at-risk students entering middle school. During the 21-22 school year, Emily served as interim assistant principal at Rochester High School. Emily earned her Ed Specialist degree with a focus in educational leadership, along with her administrator's certificate from Oakland U. She holds a master's degree in reading, curriculum assessment from Marygrove College, and a bachelor's degree in applied science from Eastern Michigan University. Emily has also served on the district math committee representing special education students. Emily's not with us tonight. She's at an educational conference. Also, technology services specialist. We are recommending Jennifer Van Howe for the technology services specialist position. Ms. Van Howe joined RCS last year as a secretary in technology. Prior to coming to RCS, Jennifer worked on the administrative team at Eagle Creek Academy as the office manager. Jennifer holds a BA in communications from Oakland U and an MBA from the University of Phoenix. Is Ms. Van Howe with us this evening? Sorry, you're in the dark. Welcome. And also, finally, we're recommending Karen Crabtree be appointed as the new position of MTSS Administrator. Karen has been an educator for 25 plus years. Karen has served Rochester Community Schools at Adams High School and Van Hoosen Middle School since 2017 as an assistant principal at both buildings. Prior to coming to RCS, Karen worked as an assistant principal and counselor in the Northville Public School District, and she began her teaching career as an educator in Livonia and in Cass City. Karen has developed strong relationships with her colleagues through her time here in RCS. With Karen's knowledge, experience, and training in multi-tiered systems of support, tiered interventions, trauma-informed practices, traumatic event crisis intervention protocols, crucial conversations, restorative practices, cultural proficiency, cognitive coaching, and mindfulness, we're thrilled to welcome Karen into this new role. And Karen is here this evening as well. Welcome, Karen. Next up, also recommending for approval this evening an agreement between the Rochester Administrator Association and Rochester Community Schools. The bargaining team from RAA and the board reached tentative agreement on a one-year extension or new agreement. The tentative agreement was reached on June 21st, 2022. Members of the bargaining team were as follows. For the board, Elizabeth Davis, Chief Human Resource Officer, Matt McDaniel, Executive Director of Business Services, and myself. For the association, Dave Poncius, Principal of McGregor and RAA President, Allison Roberts, Principal of Hart Middle School and RAA Vice President, Pasquale Cusmano, Principal of Adams High School, and Dan Mooney, Principal of Van Hoosen Middle School. RAA membership ratified this tentative agreement on June 22nd, 2022. The current collective bargaining agreement covers the period between July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2022, and this new agreement is a one-year agreement, July 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2023. A summary is as follows. This is a one-year agreement, as stated. Also, Special Education Supervisor and Principal of Virtual Campus ACE and Virtual Campus ACE Academic Administrator are added to the recognition clause. These positions have been in the bargaining unit but had not been added to the recognition clause in previous contracts. Secondly, the stipend for an RAA administrative intern would increase from $3,812.20 to $4,500 for the first year of the internship, and any individual who remains an intern for a second year would receive $5,500. This stipend is the amount that would be paid over the intern's REA salary for a 10.5-month internship. It was also agreed to that if an intern was then hired as an assistant principal, they would be placed on step 2 of the REA salary schedule. Also, a $2,500 stipend will be paid for the additional responsibilities required of RAA administrators for the 2022-2023 school year. An increase in the longevity payment of $300 per level and $350 increase to the tax-sheltered annuity payment each year. It was agreed to that if an elementary building would reach an enrollment of over 600 students, a meeting would be held to discuss if a plan of additional support was necessary. And for salary, effective July 1, 2022, the salary schedule would increase by 1%, and those administrators who receive an effective or highly effective rating on their prior year end-of-year evaluation would be eligible to move on the salary schedule and advance one step. Additionally, the administrators would receive a 1% off-schedule increase for 2022-23. A new salary schedule was negotiated for the special ed supervisor classification. We'd been discussing the responsibilities and work year of this position since it was created in 2019 and agreed to an increase in the salary and the work year. And finally, this evening, the administrator contract renewals. The Rochester Administrator Association contracts and employment manuals for non-union administrators set forth the contract term for each administrator based upon probationary or non-probationary status. We're recommending that the employment contracts of the administrators attached be renewed for an additional one-year period. The renewal of the term of the administrative contract does not impact the conditions of employment, such as wage and benefits, which are governed by the collective bargaining agreement or the personnel manual in the case of non-union groups. It's recommended that the contracts of the attached administrators be renewed for one additional year. That concludes the HR report.
Thank you, Dave. That was quite a bit. Okay, so we need to motion to approve the Human Resources Report as presented. A motion by Kristen, support for that would be Scott. Word discussion. Nothing from the board, okay. Public comment on this?
Mr. Murphy, I'm wondering if the following
Excuse me,
people are
please,
on that list.
Please do not direct your comments directly to one single individual. Thank you.
People sitting up on the stage, I would like some sort of verification about the people who are listed on that agreement, the people. Could I have someone tell me who those names are or verify the names?
We can have somebody reach out to you tomorrow.
No, I'd like it done tonight.
No, we're not going to.
I have 3 specific people I'd like to know about.
And you can reach out tomorrow.
You are not being fair. I'm asking for 3 specific people, and it's 3 pages long. Okay, so when I looked at the board packet, I noticed that Amy DeCreasy, Debbie Fragamenti, and Lori Grine were in that little listing of people. And if anything, I don't think the contract should approve them because they've cost this district so much money and so much wasted time and effort. So if anything, this is the time to not renew anything for them and terminate them, get them out of here. Save some money and hire other people who know how to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Deanna Harless. I just wanted to say I read through the list of names, and like Stephanie said, I don't agree with continuing to employ people who have admitted under oath that they spend 60 to 70% of their time on social media. I know you guys don't use the term dossier, but we've all seen the list of who was gathered in screenshots, and I would just urge you to consider not renewing people who have not added value to the district, such as Lori Grine, Amy DeCreasy, and Debbie Fragamenti. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more, it's time to take a vote on this. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Okay, and that now is a 6-0 vote on this with Mr. Patel. Let's see, next is 2022 tax rate certification, an action item for Mr. Matt McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2022 tax rate request includes an 18 mil levy on non-homestead property for the general operations of the district, 1.76 mils on all classes of property for debt service obligations, and 1.463 mils on all classes of property for the sinking fund that was approved by the community in November 2019. As you know, the community approved a 1.5 mil levy for the sinking fund. I don't know if I can move here. However, sinking funds are subject to heavy rollback restrictions, which reduce the mills the district is authorized to levy for sinking fund purposes. Based on this information, we recommend the approval of the tax rates as presented for the 22-23 fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And we need a motion to approve the 2022 tax rate certification as presented, moved by Michelle and supported by Kristen. Board discussion on this? Nothing? Public comment on this? Yes.
Ooh, this is so much fun. Maybe I should run. So, you know that bond that's coming up in December of 2024 that you guys might want to try to get renewed? I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I get all the information out to the public so that you guys don't get it renewed. And no more money. Done. And everything else that's expiring in, you know, the 2030s and all of that, I'm going to do the same thing. So I hope you guys end up starving for money, right? So, yeah, you're wasting my money.
Thank you. Okay, time for a vote on the 2022 tax rate certification. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. And that is 6-0. Next is approval of the 2022-23 fiscal year budget. And this again is Matt McDaniel.
Thank you. Attached 22-23 budget resolutions, you should find detailed schedules for each fund. There have been no material changes to the proposed fiscal year 22-23 budgets since they were reviewed in detail with respective board members on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday last week. In the general fund, budget revenues are $196,365,285, and budgeted expenditures total $197,452,949, for a projected fund balance of $36,724,627. Next is the debt service fund. Budgeted revenues are $10,683,654, with budgeted expenditures totaling $10,808,519, for a projected fund balance of $1,066,977. Moving on to the capital projects bond fund, budgeted revenues total $2,500, while budgeted expenditures are $9,931,416, with a projected ended fund balance of $125,599. This fund includes additions and renovations at various sites, as well as technology, infrastructure, equipment, furniture, and other improvements. In the capital project sinking fund, projected revenues total $8,835,836, with projected expenditures of $8,831,836. Based on these amounts, fund balance is projected to end at $1,197,547. Estimated revenues in the bookstore fund totaled $202,000, which are offset by projected expenditures totaling $146,625, for a total estimated fund balance at June 30, 2023 of $169,304. Projected revenues for the Early Learning Center or Caring Steps Fund total $1,094,315, with projected expenditures also totaling $1,094,315 for projected fund balance of $0. Food Service Fund estimated revenues total $4,976,674, with estimated expenditures totaling $5,185,985, with an estimated ending fund balance of $1,540,795. As a reminder, the district is actively using fund balance to comply with federal regulations that require a decrease in the district's food service fund balance. And then finally, estimated revenues in the Student School Activity Fund total $3,041,807, with estimated expenditures totaling $3,026,488 for an estimated ending fund balance of $1,368,028. We recommend that you approve these budgets as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We need a motion to approve as presented. That would be Joe, with a second from Michelle. Board discussion on this? And public comment? Yes.
Wasn't quite able to catch up with all the millions of dollars being thrown around, but if I understand right, you know, with the $18 million, $1.76 million sinking fund or $1.5 million sinking fund, there's only a $3 million fund for the kids. Is that accurate? Only $3 million go to the kids, and yet we get $18 million to cover everything else. Is that right?
I'll just say, no, that is not correct.
Okay, for voting purposes, looks like we have a temporary emergency absence by Kristen Bull. So it'll be the 5 of us right now voting on this. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so that will be a 5-0 vote for this. Next is 5.5, approval of the 2021-22 fiscal year budget amendment. And again, this is Matt McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. So again, attached to the budget amendment resolutions, you'll find schedules of proposed changes to the general fund, debt service fund, capital projects, bond fund, capital project sinking fund, food service fund, early learning center or caring steps fund, and student or school activity and bookstore funds. All these proposed amendments were reviewed in detail last week with board members. General fund budget includes an increase in budgeted revenue of $2,523,531, increase in expenditures of $1,276,905. The net effect of these changes is an increase to budgeted fund balance of $1,246,626 for an anticipated ending fund balance of $37,812,292. Proposed debt service fund budget includes a decrease in budgeted revenue of $99,115 and a decrease in budgeted expenditures of $500. This results in a decrease in projected fund balance of $98,615 for an ending fund balance of $1,191,842. Capital Projects Bond Fund budget proposes a decrease in budgeted revenue of $70,045 and a decrease in expenditures of $3,492,457. The net effect of these changes is an increase to fund balance of $3,422,427 for an estimated fund balance at June 30, 2022 of $10,054,515. The proposed amendment to the Capital Project Sinking Fund includes an estimated decrease in budgeted revenue $39,210, as well as a decrease to budget expenditures of $176,227, which results in an increase to estimated fund balance of $137,017 for an estimated ending fund balance of $1,193,547. The bookstore fund budget projects an increase in budget revenue of $104,000, an increase of $48,625 to budgeted expenditures. resulting in an increase to projected fund balance of $55,375 for a projected ending fund balance of $113,929. The proposed Early Learning Center or Caring Steps fund budget shows a decrease in budget revenue of $209,469, with a corresponding decrease in budget expenditures of $209,469, resulting in no change to fund balance, with an estimated fund balance at June 30, 2022 of $0. Food service fund budget estimates an increase in budgeted revenue of $976,417, while budgeted expenditures increased $452,097, resulting in an increase to fund balance of $524,050, with an estimated ending fund balance of $1,750,106. The Student School Activity Fund projects an increase in revenue of $698,151, an increase in expenditures of $776,804. Net effect of these changes is a decrease in fund balance of $78,653, with an anticipating ending fund balance of $1,352,709. Based on this information, we recommend that you approve the budgets as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. We need a motion to approve the 2021-22 fiscal year budget amendment as presented. That's Barb, with a second from Scott. Board discussion? Okay. And public comment? Vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, and that is 6-0. Next on the agenda is renewal of the district membership to the Michigan High School Athletic Association at $0. The Michigan Association of School Boards $7. And again, this is Matt McDaniel.
I think you said it all there, Mr. Beers.
Nothing to add? Okay, just reading from the page here. Board discussion? Oh, sorry, yep, motion first. We need a motion to approve the said items, the renewal of the district membership of the MHSAA, the Michigan Association of School Boards, and the MASB Legal Trust Fund. Motion by Michelle with support from Kristen. And now, board discussion? None? Public comment on this? Yes.
I just noticed that we're spending about $10,000 to renew membership to the MASB, and I was wondering what tangible benefits are we getting from that organization? It's my understanding that the school board has what it needs to function as a local government for the school. So is it possible to pull out of that organization and take back local control?
Thank you.
Kevin, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I would just like to say that the MASB has been an extremely useful organization. They provide training, although we do have to pay for training, it's a pittance of the cost associated with putting it on. They also have lawyers there, so we can contact them for additional opinions or information. We can get information, and we also can, it gives us an opportunity at conferences to, what's the word I'm looking for, to communicate with other school districts and board members as well from across the state to get a feeling for what's going on in different areas. So I find it to be a very valuable organization, not to mention they also advocate on behalf of school districts too.
Thank you. And now for a vote on this, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And that is 6-0. Next, 2022 and 23 organizational items. This is Matt McDaniel.
Thanks again, Mr. President. So each year, we ask the Board of Education to approve our annual organizational items. This year, there is only one change. It's an addition. Under the designation of District Legal Counsel representation, we're adding NAG's Break PC, which has been added for business matters and environmental issues.
Thank you, Matt. Motion to approve the 2022-23 organizational items as presented. Moved by Joe, seconded by Kristen. Thank you. Board discussion? Nothing. Public comment? Also nothing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And that is 6-0. Next is International Academy Budget. Shockingly, Matt McDaniel.
Yeah, my last item tonight. So the current consortium agreement states the following. The Oakland campus fiscal agent shall prepare a budget no later than March 31st preceding each fiscal year and provide the prepared budget to each participating district which sends pupils to its campus. The budget provided to each participating district shall include the percentage of the foundational allowance to be charged for the following year. Each participating district shall have until June 30th to approve, disapprove, or abstain regarding the budget for the ensuing fiscal year by resolution of its Board of Education and provide notice of its action to the governing body and appropriate fiscal agent. Participating district that disapproves a budget for the ensuing fiscal year shall be deemed to have unilaterally withdrawn from its participation in the consortium effective at the end of the current consortium fiscal year, and its rights and obligations shall be governed by the unilateral withdrawal provisions of Article 3, Section C.3 of the agreement. Budget revisions made during the year will be shared with participating districts. Beginning in November 2021, Bloomfield Hills Schools held budget meetings with local business officials to provide a preliminary budget and tuition amount. In March 2022, the Bloomfield Hills School prepared the attached budget document. Based on this information, it is recommended that the board adopt the resolution in support of the proposed 2022-23 International Academy Oakland campus budget as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We need a motion to approve the International Academy budget as presented. Moved by Scott. Support from, that looks like Joe. Okay. Board discussion? Nope. Public comment? Yes.
Good evening, Board of Education. Joshua Raymond again. Tonight, the BOE is approving a budget policy for our share of funding the International Academy. The International Academy provides a stellar education for some students in Rochester Community Schools. We usually have 25 spots available per year, but 125 or more students apply. Many apply due to its reputation, but having students who attend both the International Academy and Rochester Adams, I have seen firsthand the amazing opportunity this is for the students it fits. It is important that we talk about student fit because the International Academy is great for some students and torment for others. With 8 classes instead of 6 and significant effort required in each, the IA is best for the serious academic student, but can be overwhelming for students who prefer to focus on sports or social life. With every class incorporating skills taught in the AP Capstone project, the IA is better for students who want to dig into each subject and not for students who want a list of facts to memorize and skills to master to achieve a letter grade. The curriculum at the IA is very rigid and very deep, so students who want to take electives in business, computer science, or performing arts might not fit in as well. Most of the students there absolutely love it, but a decent number figure out it is not the school they want to attend. With students leaving each year, our district has the opportunity to fill those seats to get us back up to our 100 slots. As so many students want to attend, I believe we should do that to maximize the number of RCS students who get this opportunity. I also believe we should increase the number of slots we hold at the International Academy. Yes, we do send our entire state allowance per student to the IA, but that is only a portion of the funds that we spend to educate each student at our high schools. We save money by sending a student to the IA, and we can then spend more money per student remaining in our district schools. I hope one of the trustees will raise a motion at a future meeting to backfill any open slots at the IA and to increase the number of slots RCS holds at the International Academy. This is in the interest of our entire school
30
community.
seconds.
And I sincerely thank you for the opportunity to speak for a second time on a topic that is important to me and my children, students in this district.
Thank you. All right, so time to vote on the International Academy budget as presented. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And that is 6-0. And at long last, thank you. That concludes the new business portion, just making sure, yep. And public comment is next. Citizens requesting placement on the agenda. There are 4. First up is Andrew Weaver.
All right, so this November, we have 3 seats up for election on that board. We have 2 6-year seats, we have 1 2-year seat. If we want change in our community, it starts with those seats. What we saw today was, again, people said it was a breath of fresh air. We actually heard no votes, but they were very predictable no votes. They were at a time when it was the right thing to do because you are campaigning for your seat. The next vote after that would have been the important vote, when you could have held someone accountable for what they did, and it was all yes votes again. So we have to make sure we're paying attention. We have to know where people stand on important issues. So it's nice to hear that we voted no to not limit people being able to speak from here, but we also heard then, well, we don't agree with what they say, but let's let them talk. We want engagement in our community. We want dialogue in our community. We want to work on the problems in our community. That means we have to speak to people that we somewhat do not agree with at times to understand where they are coming from, not just give them a platform to speak so that they can talk, but actually listen. That is what needs to change. The politics need to go. That has to stop. And we have 2 very, very political activists on our board. One of them is up for election. The other one should have resigned long ago. But that is why we have to focus on these next seats. Who are you voting for? What do they stand for? What are their actions? Because again, here tonight, we could have held someone accountable, and we heard all yes votes. Having a slightly more conservative in some people's eyes, or a little less liberal elite board is not change. That is why I'm announcing I will be running for the board in November, and I am humbled to have the endorsement and support from former Delta Kelly principal Amanda McKay.
30 seconds.
We are going to work together to make sure we prioritize students, respect parents, and support the good educators, and get the politics and the drama out of this district so we can start
10
speaking
seconds.
to one another and work on the problems.
Thank you. Next is Stephanie Van Dale.
My apologies for missing my slot on June 6th. I'm pretty sure everyone missed what I planned to say. I watched the meeting online and was shocked that Deborah Jones felt the need to advocate to elected officials for the removal of speaking time from other parents. Deborah Jones thinks that something has to be done about rudeness. That's rich, because people are just so mean, and can't something be done? Where have I heard those phrases before? Depositions. On June 6th of all days, the 78th anniversary of D-Day, Deborah Jones had the nerve to propose a limit on speech. From this board, this superintendent, the very same administration that was sued in federal court for violations of free speech just a few short weeks ago. Parents get 3 minutes, trustees and superintendents get all night long. If anything, all citizens of this district must demand more time to speak, for dialogue, for debate. We need more transparency, more accountability from elected officials and staff bureaucrats, not less. Deborah Jones requested for more gaslighting from this board, and today you almost approved the rewrite of the handbook. How come Deborah Jones gets action from the board in 2 weeks and the rest of us get nothing from you people in 3 years? My maternal grandfather fought and barely survived Omaha Beach. I would not be here today if he did not fight against fascist dictators. And I find myself doing something similar, right here, right now, in this very room. The beauty of the leftist hypocrisy laid out by Deborah Jones surely made each of our founding fathers roll over in their graves. A republic, if you can keep it, said Ben Franklin. I'm outraged at the actions of the board, and they need to be reminded at each and every meeting. I am appalled at this board refusing to allow and follow their own administrative procedures and discharge the very people who caused so much pain to a member of our community. I am frustrated that the board will not do their job and hold Shaner, Fragamenti, Green, and DeCreasy accountable for their actions.
30 seconds.
And I am saddened because there are parents still out there who continue to feel silenced by this board. November is coming. Trust and credibility are hard to earn, easy to lose, and people like you are worthless without them.
Thank you. Next is Roxanne Rapanen. I hope I said it right. Oh, that wasn't her. I thought that was probably her going over there. Roxanne, one more time. Rapanen. Not here. Okay, so next is Deanna Harless. Okay, removal? Thank you. Very good, you're welcome, thank you. Okay, and so we have a few yellow cards. The first one is Josh Raymond. You can do a yellow card also. Good, okay, all right. Next is John Markin, or Markle?
Good evening, Board of Education. I just wanted to point out to you, first of all, thank you, Mr. Beers, for not making me Italian, which is usually what happens when people hear my last name. It's Markel, and I know my handwriting is terrible, and I'll work on it in the future. That being said, I want to point out to you that I went out on your school board website this weekend trying to find some old meeting minutes, and everything prior to, and don't hold me to this, 2018 is in Silverlight, and Silverlight is no longer supported. So you have all of your old videotape you can't see. I tried a half dozen different viewers to try and get to it, and I could not get there. I do not know currently what Michigan record retention law requires for you to keep videotape, but quite frankly, if you want transparency, it's one of the best things you can do. If you truly want transparency, a picture speaks 1,000 words, a videotape speaks 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 in a lot of cases. That being said, earlier this evening, there was a vote taken, and that vote went 3-3. And I would just like to point out to the three of you who put your big boy pants on, excuse me, 2 big boy pants and 1 lady who put her big girl pants on, thank you very much. Because quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, there is not the opportunity for us to address our grievances with our government when we don't even know what you're going to talk about. And you need to realize that. People can't tell you what they think when they don't know what you think, because they get to come here and watch you not even have a conversation. You folks spent several $100 million this evening, if I got all the numbers right, with the backs and forths. And you didn't say a word. Very few things were said. One person addressed attending the school board association, being a member of the school board association. That was about it. There is no robust back and forth. And Mr. Patel, I appreciate the fact that you actually said you don't like people standing here. I used to sit in those seats, not as a school board member, and I didn't like people addressing me either sometimes. It got pretty darn uncomfortable. But the fact of the matter is I have the right to stand here and say what I want to say. And when I took the job, I had to put my big boy pants on, and sometimes people told me stuff I didn't want to hear. It's just part of the deal. But you will never, ever get out of this if you don't
10 seconds.
Listen to people and give them that opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next yellow card is from Deanna Harless. Deanna, all set? Okay, yep, gotcha. And next is Lori Baggett.
Good evening. I was going to comment on the draft that did not pass. Again, I am one of the fans to the fact that it did not pass tonight. I appreciate that. I am confused about another thing. I have been asking since December 2020 when the chat with the board or the dialogue with the board would be resuming prior to board meetings. On December 10th, 2020, Kristen Bull emailed me and wrote, when in-person Board of Education meetings resume would be when those dialogue situations would happen. And they have yet to resume. So I'm wondering when that's going to happen. I think that that's an opportunity for the board to talk to the public and to have some one-on-one dialogue to get some answers. I know of no other forum where the public can get some answers other than to make comments here and hope to get an email. So I agree with the last statement that there needs to be more dialogue between the board and the public. It's not hard to see why the public gets frustrated with this board. We are told one thing many times and then nothing happens. The last thing that I want to say is I don't know why these kinds of forums have to be situated like this. Why does the board sit up on a stage and the public down on the floor? When I go to the Michigan the Michigan Education meetings, the board is sitting at the table with the public. So I think that that might be something you should consider. Thanks.
Thank you. And next is Carol Beth Litkui.
I'm Carol Beth Litkui. I have 2 kids in the district. As some of you know, I went to Rochester schools myself, grades K through 12. Rochester prepared me well, and after graduation, I went on to become a public school teacher. My husband and I were excited to return to our hometown to raise our family, in part for these great schools. Unfortunately, this year, I've become aware of some disturbing problems in our district. In the depositions from the recent Denverno lawsuit, administrators admitted to using taxpayer dollars to pay employees to gather annotated screenshots of parents' social media posts, compiling information about their kids and where they work. They sent parents baseless cease and desist letters, contacted law enforcement, and complained about parents to their employers. One mom ended up getting fired. In addition, administrators seem willing to violate federal FOIA law by denying that class curriculum exists or charging thousands to millions of dollars for information. They've also removed some advanced classes without a formal vote from the Board of Education and against parents' and students' wishes, which you've continued to ignore. There are a number of problems, and unfortunately, our current board has largely remained silent and seems to rubber stamp most decisions. I was pleased to see some public debate going on today, but so often we don't see public debate. So often we don't see you discuss questions from our community. Sadly, we still haven't seen oversight of the administration. Where are the checks and balances? This administration has spent so much time, effort, and resources suppressing information and trying to silence citizens with dissenting views. These recent lawsuits were completely avoidable, and this behavior needs to stop. We need to listen to a diversity of views and ground ourselves in common sense and morality. We need to put our kids first, respect parents, support teachers, and restore our focus on academic excellence. We need transparency, healthy communication, and of course, accountability. I believe we need to turn the page on indifferent and complacent leadership to help restore our vision. And that's why I'm also stepping up to run in the school board election on November 8th. I ask for our community's support. I know it could get contentious, and of course, that's nerve-wracking. I'm just a mom and a teacher who loves this community. I'm not a politician. I don't have all the answers, and I know I have a lot to learn. But I'm willing to
30
listen
seconds.
and stand up for what's right. I'm willing to bring forth citizens' concerns at meetings, ask questions, publicly debate, and respectfully agree or disagree with fellow board members with the ultimate goal in mind. Everything we do should be for our kids, and that means remembering that parents are partners in the process.
10 seconds. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Time for additional comments. Members of the administration.
Yes, good evening, board members. I want to celebrate that our summer learning program is well underway in our district. Our camps are running well, and we are already into the second component of our secondary summer school program. One of the pieces of point of pride right now is we have students that are traveling overseas in Germany. We're returning to some of our strategic plan initiatives of visiting other countries. We have other administrators who are currently overseas. It's been fun to watch what they'll bring back to our students as well. So we wish them safe travels as they're coming forward. Also, I just wanted to assure the community that is hopefully watching and could help us in some respects as we're looking at our hiring practices and bringing more staff members to Rochester. Our HR department has done a significant amount of hiring already, which we're grateful, but we're also looking for transportation. School-age care is one that I want to assure families that are watching that is something that we're working very diligently on, along with our Caring Steps program, so we can provide the services that your families need when the school year comes. I'd also like to do a shout out to our seniors who have just graduated. It's been an incredible graduation season, and I'm just so incredibly proud. Our entire administrative team and Board of Ed have been so proud to watch the behavior and the spirit of our students. Our future is in a great place with our seniors, so I wanted to congratulate them. And also, I would like to extend thanks to each of the Board of Education members this evening as we bring this final school board meeting to a close. I just would like to congratulate you on your grit and your perseverance and your commitment to this organization, to every family who sends their children to school here, for keeping the focus in on what's most important, and that's our compelling why, our kids. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. And members of the board. Nothing. I would like to say just a word about the commencement ceremonies also. I thought they were fabulous. Adams, Rochester High School, and Stony Creek, as well as the adult ed program. All four of those ceremonies were wonderful and great celebrations. And so we appreciate the efforts of everybody involved, and we know what a task that truly is. All right, announcements, only one of them. Our next regular meeting of the Board of Education is slated for July 25th at 7 p.m., and that will be right here in the Rochester High School auditorium. We need a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:47. That's Michelle, with support from Barb. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's a 6-0 vote. It's now 8:48, and we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.